I want to talk about the XFL thing because I've seen a lot of stuff online that, quite frankly, is not accurate. And I told Sean about this off the air. I have seen people, saying things about Vince McMahon that's not accurate. I have seen things being said in terms of a supposed scandal that is not accurate. And some of these are major wrestling news sites and even a major wrestling news YouTube channel that is saying stuff that's not accurate. And so I want to break it all down. I have a ton of information. I hopefully don't get redundant, but I'm going to break down everything and try to dispel some of the bullshit that I've seen people say about the XFL over the last few days. So it was on April 10, last Friday, that the same day that Vince McMahon decided he was going to run live TV again. And that's a whole other story in itself, Sean. But that same day it came out that the XFL was laying off most of its staff and they were going to shut down operations. That led to speculation that Vince decided to run live TV because he was in an ornery mood because he had gotten the XFL news that day. Now, Darren Ravel, he's a reporter for Action Network. On April 13th, he posted on Twitter that the XFL had filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and he posted bankruptcy documents that showed that WWE owned 23.5% of the Class B shares of the XFL. And for anybody that's not familiar with this stuff, Class B versus Class A, same value, but you typically don't have the voting rights. And there could be other benefits that Class A has. Typically, it has to do with voting rights. Otherwise, the value is the same. But he came out with that. And a lot of people ran with that and said, oh, my goodness, scandalous, scandalous. The fact of the matter is, and kudos again to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics because he posted WWE's 10Q report from Q1 of 2018. And a 10Q report is a quarterly report that public companies have to file with the SEC, reflecting their performance. So when WWE filed their 10Q report for Q1 of 2018, it showed that they had equity in the XFL. They listed it straight up. They didn't say how much equity they had, but they said that they had equity. They referred to it as insignificant. And it was done as part of the deal that had WWE sell their XFL IP to Alpha Entertainment, which is Vince McMahon's parent company that owns the XFL. So all this stuff I've seen on the internet about scandal, 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 this was already public information, has been for 2 years. And if somebody just, failed not to do research, that's your problem. Now, the only thing that shareholders might find interesting potentially is how much equity they had, 23.5% of the Class B shares. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to perceived value. And I'll talk about it in a minute, but I don't think that the value of those shares is probably very high. And so when you look at the perceived value of that 23.5%, it's probably not very significant, I don't think. You have any questions?
What would you think that amount would be? Like if you were just throw it out there, or is it too hard to tell?
You can't. Well, they're not public, so it's really hard.
Yeah.
Like for example, my company, without going into too much detail, my company, I don't own my company. My holding company owns my company, and the shares in my company, I think we listed like $100 a share. I think is what we put on paper. Just because you got to put a price on paper.
Sure.
But we're not public, and so
will WWE have to disclose this amount, like what they think it's worth, since they own it?
Because they're in bankruptcy, and let me clarify, they're in Chapter 11, not Chapter 7. Do you know the difference?
No.
Chapter 7 means that the debtor's assets are sold in order to pay their creditors, basically. Chapter 11 means that the debtor is given the opportunity to pay the creditors, cut deals, change terms, try to basically pay the creditors on their own. They filed Chapter 11. And so what I think is going to happen is I think that list of creditors that they listed, which, by the way, in terms of financial compensation, they didn't list WWE. They didn't list Vince McMahon. They listed XFL coaches. I think there was like photographers, things like that. I think they're going to look to make good on those people. And I think that Vince and WWE will kind of come up the rear on that afterwards. But that's kind of what I think is going to happen. Now, I want to talk about a timeline of events. And again, the reason I want to talk about it is because I've seen a lot of stuff on social media where people are trying to allege a scandal, trying to allege that Vince committed insider trading. So I want to break down everything to kind of explain everything to people, at least to the best of my ability. So last December, the Oklahoma Firefighters Pension and Retirement Fund, which is a WWE shareholder, they filed a lawsuit against WWE claiming a breach of their commitment to shareholders. And what they claimed was that there was a credible basis to believe that Vince and other senior officials had diverted resources to the XFL, and they used the IP as an example. And the reason they used that is because WWE sold the XFL IP to Alpha Entertainment for $1 million, when Charlie Ebersol, before he started the AAF, allegedly valued the XFL IP at $50 million, and tried to buy it from Vince McMahon for $50 million. So that's one of the reasons that the Oklahoma Firefighters Pension Fund is claiming a diversion of resources. You skipped this opportunity supposedly to get $50 million for this asset because you sold it to $1 million to Vince McMahon's entity. They also question if there's a conflict of interest, which is an obvious one with Vince McMahon when it came to financial transactions, and they wanted documents that explain the ties. I don't know if the bankruptcy document's going to do enough. I mean, obviously, there was stuff in there, like they listed the addresses for some of the XFL coaches. And the address, if I remember right, I think it was like 1266 East Main Street, basically right next door to WWE headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. Darren Ravel from Action Network, he came out and said that they were right next door to each other, XFL headquarters. He said there was frequent traffic back and forth. He said a lot of the employees essentially worked 2 full-time jobs going between them. But again, this was not new information. That same 10Q report that they filed in 2018 said that there was a shared services agreement between the two companies. And that WWE essentially was going to be having employees do things for the XFL, and they were going to get compensation in return. So they didn't really hide anything when it came to that stuff. But this is where it started to get interesting. So December is when that lawsuit was filed, right? On March 10th, the lawsuit was voluntarily dismissed. And nothing was really said about it. And my belief is that there was probably a settlement. WWE probably cut him a deal. But that happened on March 10th. 2 days later, after that lawsuit was out of the way, the XFL season was paused. They announced it on March 12th that the XFL season was paused. About a month after that, April 10, they announced they're suspending operations. They laid off their employees. And then April 13 is when they filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And that's when we found out about how much equity WWE owned and all of that. So there's an added wrinkle to this. And I mentioned this a minute ago. On March 25th, which was 2 weeks before, or 2 weeks after the lawsuit was dismissed, and 2 weeks before the XFL suspended operations, Vince sold those shares. 3.5 million shares of WWE stock. He did it on a 4-year prepaid contract with Morgan Stanley, meaning that he gets the money now, but he doesn't have to deliver the shares for 4 years. And he got somewhere in the neighborhood of $85 million in cash. And I mentioned this earlier. There were some wrestling news websites that claimed that that money went to WWE to help with their cash flow given the pandemic. That's completely inaccurate. That's not WWE's money. That's Vince McMahon's money. That was not WWE's stock. That was Vince McMahon's stock. So he took that cash, not WWE. And at the time that happened, there was some speculation. Well, why is he doing it now? The stock's $33. The stock's low, so why is Vince McMahon doing it? Now, Vince probably knew on March 25th, when he sold that stock, that the XFL was going to fold. He probably knew that they were looking at bankruptcy proceedings. He probably knew, okay, on the next earnings call for Q1 in a month, I'm going to be questioned about various things, and the stock might take a hit. He also probably knew that on that earnings call for Q1, I don't think they're going to knock it out of the park in terms of their metrics.
Yeah.
I think they're still going to be down across the board or treading water. I think network subscriptions are going to be down. Ratings are down. Everything is basically down. The only thing that's a question mark is the rights fees. Is USA or Fox, have they said they're going to withhold anything? If they don't, then the revenue's still going to be great because that's where most of their money is. But given all of that, you could suggest that Vince McMahon sold that stock knowing that the stock was going to plummet.
Sure.
Right? However, here's a term that people need to remember. There's a term called undisclosed material information. And the question is, did Vince sell that stock with undisclosed material information on WWE, meaning that he did not disclose material information about WWE prior to the stock sale? I don't think he did, Sean. Everything that I've just outlined is public information. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't think the XFL folding matters. I don't think the fact that they own 23.5% of the Class B shares matters because I don't think there's a lot of value in those shares. I don't think the Q1 results are going to matter because, again, unless USA and Fox are withholding rights, the revenue's still going to be strong, even though their metrics are going to be down. So My personal opinion is this. Does it look shitty that the chairman of the board of WWE cashed out $85 million when the economy is in trouble, when shareholders have lost a shit ton of money, when the stock is low? Now you've got guys getting laid off. Is it a bad look that the chairman of the board did that? Yeah, it is.
And keep in mind, after they have hoarded people to the point of not releasing anybody for a long time, and now they do this? Oh, by the way, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's reflective of poor leadership. Like you said, it could result in a loss of confidence, but he's got most of the voting rights, so it's not going to make a difference. But did he do anything illegal? Did he commit insider trading? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything's going to come out of it with the SEC. Again, unless there's material information that he did not disclose that we just don't know about yet. Mm-hmm. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's just kind of a shitty time where Vince McMahon kind of,
telling me.
Got to pull out some cash.